Still with me in the studio, I have Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, and Professor Anthony Kila, Professor of Strategy and Development and Institute Director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, CAPS. Well, gentlemen, good to have you. Now, we have had three guests. Mr. Dankunle, oil and energy expert, oil and gas expert, who talked about developments in the oil and gas sector, the cash for crude oil arrangement with Dangote refinery, the NNPC Limited role in the entire matter, whether the NNPC Limited has truly given directive that other importers should go through Dangote when the NNPC Limited itself is a player, individual issues, institutional issues, and then question of, is Dangote refinery trying to be a monopoly? Mr. Dankunle also addressed the issue about food, about reforms and commendation by the IMF, and then, of course, climate change, which he touched upon, in passing. After him, we had Teme George, very hardworking Arise correspondent, who just returned from Baku, Azerbaijan, where he had been covering the COP29 climate change conference of state parties, and he gave a full report. And after him, we had Professor Ayodele Morocco Clark, Professor of Energy, Law, Climate Change at the Nile University in Abuja, who helped us to unpack the theoretical issues about, the inadequacy of the Baku finance goal of 1.3 trillion by 2035, of $300 billion in the immediate, and also took time out, she did, to reflect on the political will of Nigeria to also play its own part. The whole dynamics of the political, issues relating to climate change. And one of the issues that we dealt with Teme George talked about, is the effect of Trump coming in and resigning out of the Paris Climate Accord and the implications for the international community. Let me start with you, Professor Aworawo.
I will go in that same order. I'll begin with Dankunle's submissions on several issues, and then proceed to address the climate crisis from multiple dimensions. The NNPC, oil refining, energy crisis, Dangote refinery, and the rest of them. To begin with, it is surprising that the NNPC and then some players in the industry continue to insist on importation of petrol and other petroleum products, especially petrol. Even after the Dangote refinery has started producing, they still continue to emphasize on importation. And one begins to wonder, what is this? Why this interest in importation of petroleum products? This propensity for bringing in petroleum products, even when you have it locally. If I'm to have advised the president needs to be strong. If I were him, I would have sacked some people from that place. That man that made a comment the other time, I can't quite remember his name now. He heads one of these petroleum yes. Who said the Dangote refinery, the product is substandard. He doesn't even have a license, and he wants to do a monopoly. He will not have stayed there.
Farouk?
He wouldn't have stayed there a day longer.
In charge of the upstream regulatory
exactly.
agency.
I see him as representing the interest of those who have made a lot of money from this and who want to perpetuate it.
But Prof, the other thing is that the upstream regulatory agency itself has no laboratory to test anything.
So how did he arrive at the position that...
Well, the Dangote refinery has been consistent in saying, what is he talking about? when even the Nigerian government does not have a functional
You are
laboratory.
confirming my position that the comments are, they are not factual, and that it's a reflection of, the desire to perpetuate importation and all the money they made from it. If I were the president, I would have sacked him. He won't stay there 24 hours after that comment. Because they have continued that same trajectory, that same pattern since then. We must continue to import, we must continue to import. That's where they stand. He was talking about monopoly at that time. He didn't talk about making Kaduna the Port Harcourt refinery, to all the refineries they are working on to work, to break the monopoly, if indeed they need to break monopoly. Rather, they are focused on importation. That is one. Then second, I think there is something fundamentally wrong with the pricing of the products from Dangote refinery. I say this because it is not supposed to be possible to import petrol and sell competitively with the Dangote refinery, products from Dangote refinery. I don't know how they do it, but I want to advise the Dangote people to go and take another look at their pricing. Because, it simply does not it's not logical that products imported with all the freight, all the payments here and there, they are still able to sell the same price or slightly lower than products from Dangote refinery. We know a lot of money was spent in building the place, 20 billion, but that's not money to be made in a day or in a few weeks. So I think the Dangote people need to go and take another look at the pricing of their products, such that it's not a case of going to court. Because the other day we're going to court to obtain an order to stop the government from. They should take another look at their pricing. It shouldn't be as high as to make it possible for people to import products and sell competitively. I think something is wrong somewhere. They need to go and take a serious look at that. I'm a supporter of the local content. Of course, who should not be? See the impact or even Forex. See how much the percentage of our foreign exchange that was spent in importing petroleum products. It took about 70%. Why should we not be happy that we now have a local refinery that is able to produce? And of course, we also read a few days ago that Dangote refinery has started exporting jet fuel to Europe, including United Kingdom, which is also fantastic. That also means foreign exchange coming in. So we should. I support Mr. Dankule's position that we should support the Dangote refinery, carry like a baby. Just like we support agriculture and support, other sectors of the economy. Okay. That is with the refinery. Okay. Yes, I move on to the climate change.
Okay.
Yes, I agree totally with the submissions of Professor Morocco Clark. There are two things. First, that the global north that has been at the forefront of polluting the environment, in fact, in the past almost 20 years, China has been ahead. In fact, has polluted more than, it's almost half of the total pollution from China, at least more than a quarter. Countries like these that have polluted the environment, and then other countries are now facing the impact. Of course, you gave the correct figure. Africa's contribution is less than about 3%. And yet, Africa is affected intensely by the impact of climate change. There should be some commitment by the global north. 300 billion is just it's too small. Some will say it is infinitesimally small. Yes, I agree. I agree with that submission. There is always this hypocrisy from the north, global north. They need to do a lot more. But on the other hand, countries of the global south should not just see the money from the north as the main. In fact, I'm surprised they made it the main thing at this COP29. There are two ways. You cannot continue to pollute yourself while you are saying those who have polluted before should pay for what they have polluted. Let me just take gas flaring as one example. Professor Jide Ochutok used to organize conferences on the environment in those days. We attended his program the other day, by the way. And from our research at that time, we discovered that the government actually had a policy that by 1995, gas flaring was going to stop. When 1995 came and the target was not made, they said 2000. What year are we now? 2024. 24 years after, gas flaring still continues. It's not just a matter of saying we are weak institutions, lack of government. We should do. The other countries, Netherlands, US, she talked about, they are not spirits there, they are human beings there. If a government comes and stands its ground, those multinational companies will do as they do in these other countries, such that pollution will be reduced. And then, of course, with all the commitment, with all the efforts, with all the things being done, hopefully moving forward, the pollution will reduce drastically, and of course the impact of climate change will also reduce accordingly.
Professor Kila?
Well, I think, where does one start from? Let us start from the petrol thing, which is a domestic thing. I think I would like to simplify this thing and ignore all the undertones and undercurrent and say, what is our interest as citizens and consumers that we have Dangote refinery? Our interest is that it creates jobs and wealth, and it reduces the price of petrol. Jobs, it has created. Wealth for Dangote. Price of petrol, it has not created yet.
No, the Dangote refinery now says you buy 970 naira.
970.
970 for Christmas.
Now, that's the kind of thing we should be happy about, because others are saying 1,000. So I think that is the kind of news we should focus on, that thanks to Dangote refinery, we can have lower cost of petrol. That's what we need to be driving for. So as citizens and consumers, that should be our interest. That interest, therefore, should allow us to define who's our friend and who's our enemy. Our friend is anybody making the price of petrol cost lower. Our enemy is anybody who's making it cost higher. We should define it in very simple terms like that. Then the NNPC people, they literally should behave themselves. Because this is an organization that thrives in opacity. We don't know what they're doing. They move between being a player and being an operator. The one thing they can do for Nigeria that they're not doing is to get refineries working. Whoever is their minister should think about it. One thing they owe Nigeria is let the refineries work. All the other things they're saying is just stories. Some people have made undeserved wealth, some people are planning to make it. Good luck to everybody. Their conscience and history will deal with them. But what matters is that we need to tie them down to say, where are our refineries? We should bear in mind that more than twice, they've given us dates of when these refineries should not work. I think at some point, if not a criminal offense, that should be a moral, political, or at least social offense for you to declare that you do something on a date and you've not done it. And I think it needs to be looked into. Regarding the energy issue, I have a take on that. I believe, yes, we should all, pull our weight in this matter. But I think countries let's start from Nigeria and Africa generally. I think we need to define our own policy on climate change. Because you, Dr. Ruben Abati, and my dear friend and colleague, Professor Morocco Clark, talked about political will. There are things that are not allowing political will. There are vested interests, some legitimate, some not legitimate, and there are also needs. We say the CNG is a stopgap. We're not even there yet. So by the time we struggle to get there immediately, they're going to tell us, no, it's outdated. Yes, we need to pull our weight and be faster, but we also need to understand our realities when it comes to climate change. And I have a challenge for the proponents of climate change. Noble as they're taught her, they need to do a bit more. They need to show us that this climate change issue is not just a sacrifice, but it's a window of opportunity. And I say this very, close to my home. I have a daughter who's an assistant lecturer she's very keen on this climate change. So maybe I'm talking to her now directly. That they need to give us the evidence and give us the opportunity that climate change brings to us. They say, yes.
The old man. You have a daughter who is already an assistant lecturer.
They start early these days. So they need to show us that this thing is a ground of opportunity. If it's not, if it's sacrifice, then let us know that we just have to do it. It's a tough thing. But let them not tell us on one side that we don't see the opportunities we're missing. Then the other side, they say we are dull for not taking the stance. It's not easy for somebody who has not used the benefit that caused climate disaster to just go into the sacrifice of climate change. I get the noble thing, but let's be realistic, and perhaps let's know that will be a two-way approach. And by all means, yes, let the people who have benefited for it pay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed about it. You say they've gone there to talk only about money. Yes, they need to talk about the money. Because otherwise, somebody's going to, as the joke was a few years ago, somebody's going to eat some owl or bat somewhere, and I'll be getting the cold in Lagos. No, let's not do that. Let's be careful about these things.
Okay, just before we move on, the statement that I referred to earlier from Dangote Refinery says, Dangote Refinery reduces PMS price to 970 naira. So I'm not making it up. And the company says, while the refinery will not compromise on the quality of its petroleum products, we assure you of best quality products, quality again, that are environmentally friendly and sustainable. We're talking about climate change. We're determined to keep ramping up production to meet and surpass our domestic fuel consumption, thus dispelling any fear of a shortfall in supply. Anthony Chiejina, Group Chief Branding and Communications Officer, 24th November 2024.
Well, that's a welcome development. Let's hope we all get the benefit of it.
970, can they bring it down more?
Well, that's what we need to do. It's a good start.
Welcome development.
Yeah.
Let them make it
lowest they can really go to make profit and let everybody be fine? I don't think so.
Because we're talking Christmas.
Apart from Christmas, I don't think so.
Beyond Christmas, let them not do it in Christmas, then raise it up again. If they put it and let it keep that way, they should go lower. Professor Aworawo makes an important point.
I don't think so.
How can you make something in Nigeria and you take away the cost of importing it and it's still more expensive, the same product? There's something wrong.
Something is wrong with the pricing. I'm just advising, let them go and take another look at their pricing. 20 billion will not be made in a day or recovered in a few weeks. The profits will come gradually, and with support of people like us, we will get there.
But you know what economists call the ratchet effect. It means when things go up, they don't go down again. They will stay somewhere.
Well, we shall force them. We shall force them. Professor Aworawo will help them.
Sometimes
to keep forcing beyond the ratchet effect.
Lower than that, honestly.
Anyway,
yes,
let's go.
We'll go lower if we have more refinery, but go ahead.
Let's go.
We need more refineries.
U.S. President Joe Biden has called an international criminal court war crimes arrest warrant for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as outrageous. The ICC had also issued a warrant for the arrest of Netanyahu's now-sacked Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as for a Hamas commander, Mohammed Deif, who Israel said was killed in July. Judges said, chamber trial judges, said there were reasonable grounds to believe the three men bore criminal responsibility for crimes during the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. Europe and the United States are split in their response to the warrant, with several European countries saying they respect the ICC decision. The British government said it respected the independence of the court. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Simon Harris says Ireland will be prepared to arrest the Israeli leader if he came to the country, following the ICC's arrest warrant issued on Thursday. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the decision by the ICC to issue an arrest warrant against him and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant as a black day in the history of nations.
This is a black day in the history of nations. The International Court in The Hague, which was established to protect humanity, has today become the enemy of humanity. This biased court has decided to issue arrest warrants against me and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on the fundamentally unfounded accusation that we have allegedly committed crimes against humanity, while the truth is completely the opposite. This is moral bankruptcy. It violates the natural right of democracies to defend themselves against murderous terrorism. This is an anti-Semitic step that has one goal: to deter us from exercising our natural right to defend ourselves against enemies who are rising up against us to destroy us. The State of Israel is accused of genocide, while we are working to defend ourselves from an enemy who is trying to commit genocide against us.
Okay, Professor Kila, let me start with you. Both of you are professors of international relations. What's the implication of this for global peace?
Well, I think the implication is that it's going to cause a bit of chaos. But let me go into the merit of the conversation. Biased and interested, as the declaration, the statement of Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu is, actually, his position is more sensible than that of Biden. Biden saying the decision of the court is outrageous is reckless, and someone needs to tell him. You don't say the decision of the court is outrageous, no matter who you are, especially if you're the president of America. You know, whatever is guiding him, he's wrong on this one and needs to be called out on it. You don't say that. You can disagree with it, but you disagree with the court, but you respect his pronouncement. Because the pronouncement of the court is not the political position. It is based on fact, reason, and logic. And, you know, they're not saying he's already going to be jailed. They are saying he should be tried. He should be stopped and tried. It is not an easy decision to reach, but I think we should respect that decision and maybe put up a strong defense. It must be said, because people forget about this. Bibi Netanyahu says that Israel was attacked and they've defended themselves. But Bibi Netanyahu has done something that is rare in the history of Israel. He has taken, there was a moment after that attack, I think it was 6th or 7th of September, was it? October. When for a few days, Israel became the victim in the eyes of the world. They became a David, you know, that was attacked by a Goliath. They were the little one. Bibi Netanyahu took Israel from being a David into Goliath and turned them to Herod in a short space. And that is very bad of Netanyahu, it must be said, because of all the people, there was a time when Israel went through that, when a plane was hijacked and taken to Uganda and left there. And the Israeli Defense and Army mounted an attack. People will have heard about the film Raid on Entebbe, in which they went into Uganda and freed their citizens out of Uganda, out of Entebbe, from the airport. They did such a surgical operation, and only 3 soldiers died. There are 3 casualties from the Israeli side. One of those 3 was Netanyahu's brother. So if there's anybody that should understand how Israel can retaliate and react in a surgical way, it should be Bibi Netanyahu. For not doing that, he shows himself as prone to be called a criminal.
Well, except that, Professor Kila, as you well know,
yes,
the right to defend your nation,
yes,
yeah, it's a sacred right.
Yes.
But under the Geneva Convention,
yes,
you know, there are issues about proportionality.
And that is the case here.
And under the Rome Statute.
The Rome Statute, yes.
Article 15, Article 52, there are issues about, you cannot just go about committing crimes against humanity,
yes,
persons that are hard to combat. I think the main issue,
yes,
I'm trying to summarize very quickly. I don't want to give a lecture in international law to professors.
Feel free. Feel free to professors.
No, it will be a waste of my time because you already know the issue. It's about, look, the Rome Statute and the fact that Israel is misbehaving, but can it be enforced? Can this pre-trial thing be enforced by the International Criminal Court?
Well, if you don't pre-trial, you can't reinforce. This is the start of it. Let's see how
they
it goes. They
couldn't enforce the same rule against Omar Bashir and against Putin.
Well, they enforced it in Nuremberg.
Well, and against Africa, Rwanda,
and against
Kenya.
Let it keep going. Let it keep going. And people, everybody should do their bit. Let the court, let the Hague Court do their pre-trial. There will be people like Ruben Abati that will remind them that they've not done it. And at some point, we'll get there. I believe everybody should do their bit.
Yeah. Professor Aworawo.
Yeah, I will just take it from where Professor Kila stopped. President Biden's comment that the ICC's position is outrageous.
Yes.
It's outrageous because he's supposed to understand how these things work out, the dynamics. If he says the ICC's position is outrageous, what Israel has done in Gaza, what adjective will he use to describe it? Netanyahu also says that the ICC's pronouncement is, signals a black day.
In history.
What has happened, what his forces have done in Gaza, will it be bright day? You see, people are confusing a lot of things. Two key areas. The first is that Israel has a right to defend itself. We all agree. Nobody will see what happened on 7th of October and say, oh, what Hamas did was good, and that Israel has no right to defend itself. But how do you defend yourself? And that's the point you made about the Rome Statute and other provisions, international provisions on this. There are ways in which you go and fight terrorists. You identify them, you take them out. If they have occupied a place, you attack, you clear, and hold. Those are simple principles of fighting terrorism. That is not what Israel has done in this case. It has just gone to demolish houses and kill people indiscriminately, and even allow aid to people who are affected by war. That's one. Second, Israel seems to carry on, and those who support Israel, seems to carry on as if everybody in Gaza is Hamas.
Yeah.
And that when you go killing people in Gaza, it's like you are killing Hamas supporters or Hamas members. No. You should make a distinction between Hamas and the people of Gaza.
It's a convenient generalization.
Well, and that is the point you are making. And that is what the ICC is anchoring on.
Exactly.
When the ICC, when Uhuru Kenyatta was also, a similar point was made, it was an account of the violence that accompanied the election in the country. Yeah. And it was stated that their actions or inactions contributed to the death of people.
Yes.
That was even far more indirect than this one, in which it was an order of the state to go and kill people in Gaza.
Yes, sir.
So hopefully reason will prevail, but I've said this several times that the actions and inactions of the United States, unfortunately, has caused instability across the world in some of these. Gaza, the support for Israel. If the U.S. had made, just look at the Security Council resolution of the other day. For the fourth time, the U.S. vetoed it. Everybody else agreed. The U.S. vetoed it.
I think something, Professor Aworawo, there's something that we say in our classroom. Maybe we should say it publicly here. Big as America is, one of the biggest flaws is actually in diplomacy. They need to go and learn from Europe. The European stance is always more nuanced. Americans don't understand diplomacy as a complex game in which there are nuances.
Could that be as a result of American exceptionalism?
But I think
the principle that governs American foreign policy.
I think they're just naive. I think they're naive. We must put it that way. Kissinger did not leave good suggestions. They just have this view that it's a sort
America first.
Well, exactly. It's an insular. It's a simple view. They're simpletons when it comes to matters of international politics. They're brutal force. They think it's money. They think it's might. They think it's this. They don't get it. The idea. I'm sorry, Prof, and I'm going to stop here. There's a very beautiful passage. I think, what's his author name? Eric Blair. What's his nickname? The man who wrote Eve. Who wrote the Indian stories of the British Empire, where there was a moment in which a British princess was saying that this colonial master, who is just a civil servant, a worker, does not understand that
British Raj.
A British Raj that does not understand that I, a princess, have more in common with an Indian princess than this common man who thinks because he's white, he thinks we're the same. I think the Americans don't get that, the complexity of international relations. It's a flaw they have.
Okay.
We have actually had secretaries of state who did really well. But we've also had some who didn't do well. For instance, the Secretary of State, Obama Secretary of State, John Kerry. Yeah. I was really disappointed at his position in the 2015 election. How can you just come to Nigeria, you just go to his side, you support, and then Obama himself making the broadcasts to another thing of another. But of course, we have had secretaries of state.
John Kerry's legacy, is it not more in climate change? Mixing him up.
But we remember him well for that. He did, a consummate diplomat, but I'm really surprised that...
I think John Kerry is a good man, but he's overrated as a diplomat. Let's just put it that way. I say it.
But if you were given an example, I think Adlai Stevenson was first Secretary of State.
Yes, before he became
president.
Yes.
Maybe
he was better Secretary of State than president.
And then maybe Kissinger.
I think Kissinger is the father of all of them. But again, Kissinger, you see, Kissinger, who's the father of most of these, was also a marked politician, the politics of power. And Kissinger is not the European diplomats. If you want to learn diplomacy, in case people who have children, it is in Europe, it is in France and the UK. And guess what? In Nigeria, even Zimbabwe, those are the places where you learn the sophistry of diplomacy and the very much nuances there. Have I left the country of your choice?
But the British wrote the more important books on diplomacy.
Well, absolutely.
As a student of the subject.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I listed them as well.
Didn't give me.
No, your teachers. I listed Britain. I listed
Britain.
Britain
For other countries.
The British are good, very good. But
Yeah.
maybe you needed a Kissinger when Kissinger was there actually.
Yeah.
The Cold War years and all the.
It is possible. That's what makes sense.
Thank you. Let's look for another subject. Let's come back home before we begin to talk about theory of diplomacy and all that. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, last Thursday backed President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's decision on the crisis going on in Awka Nnamdi Azikiwe University. The union condemned Professor Bernard Odo's appointment as Vice Chancellor of the institution by the Governing Council in the first instance, describing him as a candidate who did not meet the prerequisites for the position. According to a statement last Wednesday by Bayo Ononuga, who is President Tinubu's special advisor on information and strategy, the president had ordered the dissolution of the Governing Council and removed Professor Odo as Vice Chancellor and Rosemary Nwokike as Registrar. Professor Odo had immediately rejected the presidential instruction to vacate, as he lamented that the mode through which he was removed did not follow due process. Well, look, a lot of issues here about A&P, assessment of professors for appointments, whether you have to be a professor for 15 years or not before you become Vice Chancellor. Some people are even saying Professor Bernard Odo is not a real professor. He came on this program, he was pronouncing on PFQ. I don't know how a professor being assessed for promotion, or whatever position, we know what is inside his own PFQ assessment so much here. And that day, he was on the morning show. I had to point out to him, look, I sat for 4 years on the Governing Council of a university. I can't understand what is going on. And that I served as chairman establishments, and I was member of A&P. Yeah. So, Professor Aworawo, you are in Senate. Tell us, is this how they do it?
Well, what happened in this case is the Nigerian politics. You had what happened in this appointment is just a microcosm of Nigerian politics. Greg Ozubambadiwe, the chairman of council, who seemed to have just promised some people, when I take over, you'll be the vice chancellor, you'll be the registrar, and he just went ahead to pursue that.
Are you sure it's that simple?
I think it is.
Chairman of council
when you see, but what surprises me, there's even a major general in that council. If I were in that council, there will be a minority report. How will I agree with that charade? What am I looking for? That I will agree with that charade? In fact, the whether Odo is a professor or not is even in doubt. And it is more likely he has never been appointed a professor than that he has been a professor. And he's talking about due process. He contested the last election.
In Ebonyi State?
Yes, he's not supposed to be a staff again of the university. When you are going to contest election, you resign. How did he manage to keep his position in the university when he went to contest the position? That alone, he should not be a staff of Nnamdi Azikiwe University as we speak. And so many illegalities that were carried out. But fortunately, reason prevailed, the ministry intervened, and then the thing went to the presidency. The president acted swiftly, and I think some sanity would return there. But I think maybe they need some security men to maintain law and all that, because Professor Odo said even the president cannot remove him. That's only the council that appointed him. No,
it was specific. That the matter is still in court. It has not been resolved by the court. But the university, Federal University Gusau, that purportedly gave him professorship, said that they didn't give him the professorship.
That is the other side we are talking. So there are so many things that...
Must the vice chancellor be a professor? in other parts of the world. You don't have to be a professor.
If you want to change the law, you can't.
No.
So far in Nigeria, that's the law.
Yes.
If you want to change
vice
it,
chancellor, not even just a professor of a year or two. I mean,
must
that's been
have been there for
experience. That's
15
been
years.
experience.
it may not be 15 years, but at least some experience, maybe 5 years, thereabout.
Not just experience of being a professor, but administration of university.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need that.
But, and I keep saying how he managed to keep his job as a staff of Nnamdi Azikiwe University
After running
when he went to contest. He has contested several times. You resign when you want to go and contest.
But Professor Kila, he says he's from Ebonyi State, and that there's general belief in the university campus that he's been discriminated against because he's from Ebonyi.
People resort to ethnicity. So when they have weaknesses, they look for the ethnic arguments as a veneer to cover. What does it matter? We have had people from all over the place, been VCs in.
But to the point though, I think though that he might be wrong, but if he feels he's being discriminated against, it is the duty of those that are persecuting him to prove to all of us that it is not because he's a Ebonyi. And they have to state the fact very clear in a way that everybody gets it. So we take away the veneer or the suspicion of discrimination away. Because it would be a shame if we now discover that truly it's because he's a Ebonyi State. But let me say two things that worries me about this. I'm happy you talk about the president's Swiss response. Actually, let me go that second thing. The first thing is that, shame on everybody in that university, starting from this one to start it. Because the university shouldn't be in a position where they are going to court their disputing like political parties do. Already shame on the political parties for doing that. But I have sat, just like Aworawo, in council of 2 universities. And I always insist on the minority report. In all the councils where I've sat, I've always said, even when I say there's a consensus, I always say, has anybody got any different opinion? Can we please document it so that it is clear? It is clear. I don't know what is going on there, but anybody who has sat on the council will know that there's something odd going on because we discuss this thing, we check it out. The candidate goes out before we nominate a VC. And we say, can you check this? Can we go through it? So there's something very bad going on there that needs to be looked at. The other thing is that the president has stepped in and he seems to be resolving the problem. One is in a bad situation when good thing worries you. What the president has done is a good thing to step in swiftly. But I'm very worried that our own university are resorting to taking their matter to the presidency. Just when I was advocating that we need a system where state universities are not managed by state government. I believe that government, whether state governor, whether president of Nigeria, should not nominate vice chancellors. I believe that from the etymology of the word university, which is a universal thing, the university world, which is a word of its own, should govern itself. It should be free from the influence of politicians. How can somebody who got into power because illiterates and non-illiterates voted him, to have the power to hire and fire somebody who got there based on intellect and study and years of dedication? There's something wrong with us as a people, and we need to look at that. I believe ASU, now they're praising the president, I understand them. If ASU wants to find their gumption back, one of the next battles is independence of the university from politics and from government.
Well, thank you very much. We'll see how this matter is resolved eventually. But what is important? Autonomy of the university you are talking about, but the president is the visitor to that university. And then, of course,
it should be a ceremonial visitor.
The more important part of it is education.
Yes. Quality. He should be a visitor, Dr. Ruben Abati. Let him take his tea and go home, visit.
At all levels within the university system. I'm sure both of you will agree with me.
That's the key thing, yes. Yeah. Okay. Which Professor Aworawo is working hard to make happen.
One more subject before we call it a day. Meanwhile, barely 48 hours after receiving a fresh loan request, 48 hours, from President Bola Tinubu for $2.2 billion, approximately 1.676 trillion naira, the National Assembly this week promptly approved the loan. President Tinubu had on Tuesday, in separate letters to both chambers of the National Assembly, requested for approval of the fresh loan to fund 9.7 trillion naira deficit in the 2024 budget. Now, the speed is so amazing. But in a related development, Nigeria's indebtedness to the International Development Association a member of the World Bank Group, grew by $600 million in 3 months, rising from 16.5 billion in June 2024 to 17.1 as of September 2024. This emerged as President Bola Tinubu this past week requested the National Assembly to approve the sum of $2.2 billion already provided for in the 2024 Appropriation Act. The 1.76 trillion Nigeria loan was captured in the external borrowing plan for the implementation of the 28.7 trillion naira 2024 budget. Let me break it down. Nigeria is borrowing more to address fiscal deficit. DMO says this is in line with Section 27, of the Enabling Act of the Debt Management Office. It's just a month to the end of the year. They are borrowing money to finance the deficit in the 2024 budget, covering local debt, foreign debt, Euro bonds, waste and means deficit, and all of that. Before Christmas, these people will come again. In less than 24 hours, they will borrow more. But what do we do? Professor Kila. And meanwhile, they say the average Nigerian is owing 600,000 naira as a member of the third most indebted country in the world, according to the International Development Association.
So
you have 600,000 naira.
So I took
very soon the taxman will come and ask you to contribute to your share.
This 600,000 naira debt. When I read it, I was in the car and I was telling one of my aides that each one of you owes 600,000 naira, and the man said, "Maybe they can't collect them for me." So, and I think when we break it down this way, that's what we're. But on a serious note, I've tried to find out why they had this thing of going back within 2 days to go and ask for money. I'm waiting for the reply. I think it's some form of technicalities why they are doing that. They sort of knew before, but I think it's for some technical reason. Overall, what I'm going to say about loan is this. There is a general tendency in our, cultural and therefore moral mindset to know that loan is a bad thing, to feel that way. In reality, it's not as bad as it seems. The only problem we have is that we cannot feel the effect of a loan as the people. If somebody said to us, we're going to take $1 billion loan to build houses for 1 million people, after which you will see those houses and there will be more house owners who then pay it back.
No,
it will make sense.
The government says they are borrowing to build infrastructure.
Yeah, that's the problem there, because they say these things. We don't feel these things yet. That's the problem we have. The ones that borrowed in the past, the ones that are borrowing in the future, the ones that are borrowing in the present, Nigerians don't feel the benefit of it. That therein lies the problem with our loan. If you were getting loan and all of a sudden you wake up in the morning, the road in front of your house is done, and there are more roads and your schools are better, we'll be feeling great. We won't mind it.
Professor Aworawo, he's saying we should borrow for productivity.
Exactly. Yes.
Not consumption.
Yeah, that is it.
That's the summary.
Yeah. That's the summary of it. Thank you. You say it
It's
better
as
than
simple
me.
as that. And what Professor Kila just said is not hypothetical. I met Professor Bada in Benin in 2003 or so.
The chemistry professor?
No, Professor of Economics.
Economics.
Yes.
Professor who?
Obada.
Oh,
yes.
Obada.
Yes, and he was telling me about a study they did. I think the president, Instead Abacha then, wanted to know our loans and what they were used for. And it was discovered that even those ones, they said, the monies were borrowed for capital projects. When they visited the sites, the bush was not cleared. And all the money had been taken, everything had stopped. So that is the core of the matter, that the monies come, they are used for something else, not productivity, is for consumption, and it's a problem when you borrow for consumption. And, Dr. But you just say that they say it's for capital project, but it's to finance the budget. Is it to finance the capital aspect of the budget? Anyway, but the main thing is, if it is for capital projects that will lead to productivity, fine. But if it's for consumption, not good. And the summary is that even if it's for capital projects, our debt indebtedness is too high. the amount to spend servicing this is about a third.
Maybe just loaning us the money. If they want to do us a favor, they should make sure people use the money for what they say they need it for.
I think there is fraud on both sides.
Thank you very much, Professor Aworawo. Thank you, Professor Anthony Kila. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Professor Kila, don't run away. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.